And now, live in studio, cutting through your typical media nonsense and offering you a rational and unbiased perspective on current events and life in Tampa Bay. He's a successful entrepreneur, published author, top listing agent, a real estate and finance expert that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes.
That's right. Brandon Rhymes is the consumer quarterback. This is the Consumer Quarterback Show. However, Brandon is out today. I'm the executive producer of the Consumer Quarterback Show, James DeJerome, and we are committed to providing you the same quality program we always do. We're interested in improving your ability to make marketplace decisions. We want you to be empowered with information, be a better consumer out there, and find a little way to make your dollar go a little further. So what Brandon has done is assembled a group of partners. These are business owners who go out of their way to provide some information for us. And we use the show as a platform to provide that to you. And the idea is, if you listen to the Consumer Quarterback Show, you're going to learn something about business, you're going to learn something about particular fields of interest, and you're going to make wiser decisions in the marketplace. And that's our whole goal as we've assembled these folks for you. So on today's Consumer Quarterback Show, I've been blessed to be joined with two great partners, two guys have been part of the show for quite a while now, and both happen to be from Pennsylvania. So I want to bring in Fred Muth. Fred, Tampa Screens and Aluminum. He's been on the show many times. Fred, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, James.
And
Thanks for asking.
Tell me a little bit about the screen game before we introduce Greg here.
Well, the screen game has been the same for many, many years. Basically, it's an enhancement to the property. And people come from the north, like places like Pennsylvania. Remember that place, Greg?
Yep.
They come down here, and I always make the statement, they want a lanai. And a lot of people don't know what a lanai is. When I came to Florida, I had no clue what a lanai was. I just knew I wanted one.
It sounds nice.
And, I took a call yesterday from a guy from New York. He says, I want a lanai, and I started laughing. He says, why are you laughing? I said, because if you listen to the radio show, you're going to hear me talk about it. People don't know what a lanai is, and he says, does a lanai have a screen roof or a solid roof? I said, it can have either, but for you, I'll do whatever you want. And he started laughing. So basically, a lanai can be any extension off the back that requires screens, solid roof, screen roof. In some cases, even a sunroom can be considered a lanai. But that's what we sell.
Fred has lots of ways to bring value to your home, especially for Floridians, because it can be uncomfortable out there because, as Greg will tell you, the heat and humidity are back in this area for sure.
Hey, Greg, you should be answering the phones right and left right now. It's going up to, I think, over 100 today. Florida's hot, the real estate market's hot, the AC business is hot, the screen enclosure business is hot, and it's hot in Florida.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say. Hey, Greg, I'm sure I heard you guys talking at the break, and we were talking about them portable units.
Right.
I do have a lot of my customers that will put a portable unit inside a screen room that has the vinyl windows.
Okay.
They seem to work very well, and I don't know much about them, but I do see a lot of them out there.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. We also do adding the mini splits, the ductless units, to enclosed lanais. Obviously not if they're screens, but if they're glass, enclosed as well.
Yeah, we have another option. We have a vinyl window option, which a lot of people choose because it's really not habitable space. And we can install the vinyls and not call it habitable space. And they work very well in the screen enclosures and screen rooms. I sold a lot of vinyl rooms.
Both of you guys are managing to stay busy at this time of year. I mean, as an executive producer of the show, I'm constantly calling business owners and making sure that they're doing okay and checking on the partners. It seems like you guys stay pretty busy even through this issue that we're experiencing now. I know, Fred, you mentioned that you're staying busy. Greg, same with you guys?
Most definitely, yeah. Well, the heat, whether we're dealing with a pandemic or not, people are needing air conditioning. So our phones right now are nonstop.
But question specifically to you about the AC unit perhaps helping make the air quality better for them inside the home?
We're getting questions of both. There's been some information in the news about does air conditioning spread COVID? So we get questions about that. People actually ask, do I have to turn my air conditioner off? The reports that have been out there about it actually spreading it. It's not the air conditioner directly. It's the air currents that the air conditioner can generate. You know, the air conditioner is blowing air into a room, you know, typically, and those air currents, same thing that a fan would produce, can spread the germs in the air. So the air conditioner itself is not doing it. It's those air currents. So.
And you guys have taken steps to ensure safety to customers. I know, Fred, talk a little bit about the steps you've taken as a guy going into homes or doing estimates that make customers a little more comfortable.
Well, the first thing I tell them when I hang up, you know, obviously before I hang up the phone, when I discuss the lead, I specifically tell them that I practice safe distancing, and I tell them I do about a 15-foot spacing between us. And they're okay with that. Most people are fine with that. So in some cases, I'll get to the job site, and they'll get closer, you know, and I pull out my tape measure, and I show them what 10 feet is. You know? And I usually get a chuckle out of them. But I do not go into the homes. I don't go into the homes any way, shape, or form at this point. I don't need to. I can do all my measurements on the outside, and when I sign the job, I have a very unique method. All the paperwork is ready to go, and I set it down. Mostly everybody has a back patio or something that's not enclosed yet, and I set it down on a table. It's all well marked. I walk 15, 20 feet backwards, and they usually come out with a mask on at that point because they know that I'm cautious.
Right.
They sign the papers, drop the check. They walk away. I pick it up. Off I go. And I tell them that I'll shake their hand some other day, I hope.
That's right. So it's something you can overcome. In your field, you found a great way to deal with it and hasn't slowed you down a bit.
It has not slowed down at all, James. As a matter of fact, when this thing hit, I looked at my project list of things to do around the house. I said, man, I'm going to get some stuff done. Forget it. That didn't happen. I do believe that people are sitting home and they're looking out the back and saying, let's do this improvement now because I'm sitting here in this house. I want to make improvements on this house. And this isn't only in Florida. My younger brother, he is a contractor in the Philadelphia area. He's never been so busy in his life. So, you know, he's a home improvement contractor, and it's just that's what's going on. And you know, in your case, Greg, obviously when it's hot out, you're busy no matter what. I can appreciate that.
What I'm starting to notice with Greg's field is it's the humidity that kills me. I'm starting to like it warm, but I can't stand it wet.
Yeah, that's the big deal here in Florida is the humidity. The humidity is really what makes it so miserable. You know, it wouldn't be so bad in the 80s if it wasn't 80% humidity. That's what's really
now
going.
You've got your units now separate. Can you run just humidity relief and not cool?
Certain units can, yes. Yeah, there are demand dehumidification available in certain systems. Now we can also put in just a dedicated dehumidifier, central dehumidifier that will solely dehumidify. You know, so that's basically just sitting there extracting moisture out of the air all day long.
Now, the way a thermostat works, when it senses the room heating, it's going to kick in. How the humidity has the same sensor, so when it senses humidity at a certain level, it throws it on?
Correct, yeah. The thermostats today are pretty sophisticated. We can, you know, monitor humidity and temperature with the right thermostat and control either one.
And those humidity removal units don't require the homeowner to drain them or get rid of the water somehow?
They have a drain just like a central air conditioner unit does. We just have to run a drain outside somewhere or pump it outside somewhere to get rid of that water. And sometimes we actually will run it into a basin if a customer wants to collect that water because they remove, we can remove up to 25, 30 gallons of water a day with a dehumidifier.
I know I've heard Fred talk a lot about water being one of the critical things in terms of you and speccing the job out because that water that used to fall in your backyard is now going to be moved somewhere else.
That's right. You know, if you take your average parcel over here in the Brandon area, you know, let's say a cookie cutter, 15,000 square foot parcel, and you know, it's got a 2,400 square foot structure on it, 900 square foot driveway and sidewalk, you know, and now they would like to have maybe another 1,000 square feet of pool and cage or whatever on the back. I'm taking away a lot of green space.
Yeah.
And when I take away the green space, the water that previous to taking away the green space, it would percolate down to the aquifer, has now got to go elsewhere. And you have one parcel next to the other. And, of course, the engineers, they design these subdivisions. You drive by and you see the retention pond on the right-hand side. You say, wow, I'm glad to see that retention pond. Then you drive by in a heavy rainstorm, and the retention pond is dry, and the ballpark across the field is soaking wet. And it's not that it's misengineered. I believe it has a lot to do with the way the aquifer flows. So, you know, the poor kids, they're not playing in the in the ball field. They're playing ball in the retention pond. And I don't say that being comical because I've seen that.
Right.
And like, let's take the city of Tampa, for example. I need every job that I sell that requires foundation work, I have to do a green space equation to make sure that we can pour the concrete. And I appreciate that. Even though it hurts the jobs and the size in some cases, I believe it's very, very beneficial to appreciate the green space and try to figure where that water is going to go. I have customers as well as friends that live in South Tampa, and when it rains hard, they just want to leave because the water sits and it just goes nowhere. I mean, you're so close to the sea level. Yeah. Where can it go? And that's the problem.
I drive through there on days it does not rain, and there's still standing water. It's what I mean? It doesn't go anywhere.
Oh, that's even worse because then it, the mosquitoes and everything else contributes to more problems.
Hey, now that you're on mosquitoes, I had a guy tell me that there's certain screens that mosquitoes, there's certain sizes or gauges that you need to be aware of because of the insect size.
Well, here's my opinion, and it's strictly my opinion on that. There's a product out there called a 2020 fabric, which is no-see-um resistant, but it's really not 100% no-see-um proof because no-see-ums, the size that they can almost penetrate anything. They are basically microscopic. So when a person asks me about the no-see-um screen, I tell them that the 2020 is available, but it's really not 100% no-see-um proof. And if you're worried about mosquitoes are not going to get through the standard 1814. And the standard 1814 is what is in most of your house windows nationwide. Right. So it's a very bug-proof product. What I don't like about 2020 fabric is when you put it on the sidewalls, it's such a tight weave. It holds dirt, it holds water, and it's a bear to clean. And I know because I have it at home here.
I never thought about that. So you're saying the screening is so tight that it doesn't allow some particles to get through?
Well, no, it's terrible to clean. You have to triple clean it from both sides, and at that you still can't get all the dirt out of it. So it blocks visibility. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'm not a big fan of the 2020 fabric on sidewalls. I'll recommend the 2020 fabric for people who have skin concerns that want a large page, and I'll recommend it for the top because there's about a 25% reduction in ultraviolet on the 2020 fabric versus about a 15% reduction on ultraviolet for the 1814 product.
Man, I noticed that some of the plants really do well in a screened enclosure.
They do. I mean, if you're out in the sun, you, me, the plant, whatever, you're broiling in the sun. The sun is brutal down here. So when you put that fabric over top, it's a nice little reduction on ultraviolet.
All right, so we're visiting with Greg Bowman, the AC guy of Tampa Bay, and Fred Muth, Tampa Screens and Aluminum. When we come back, we're going to share more stories from those guys about what they're up to and ways that you can add value to your home, whether it's a screen room or improving your AC, and certainly we want to get rid of that humidity. So come on back and check us out on the Consumer Quarterback Show.
This is Work Done, and you're listening to the Real Estate Quarterback Show hosted by my man, Brandon Rhymes.
To get in touch with Brandon, call 813-670-7372. Online at consumerqb.com. You're listening to the Consumer Quarterback, Brandon Rhymes, cutting through your typical media nonsense and offering you a rational and unbiased perspective on current events and life in Tampa Bay. Online at consumerqb.com.
That's right. ConsumerQB.com is where you can find all the partners that you hear on the Consumer Quarterback Show with Brandon Rhymes. My name is James DeJerome. We've had a couple of good conversations here with Greg Bowman. He's the AC guy of Tampa Bay, and Fred Muth from Tampa Screens and Aluminum, who are both partners on the program. And, of course, we talk about the show. What it does for you as a consumer is provide you with some information, some knowledge that makes your dollar go a little farther in the marketplace. In addition to that, Brandon wants to tell you something good, something positive for your day. And I got a little story about a study that was done about COVID-19's impact on fathers and families that I'm going to share with you here coming up in a little while. But I wanted to get back to Greg because it's so hot outside that now if you're in your car and if you have vinyl seats, your shirt is stuck to your back. So if you're driving around out there now and you're wondering why is it so wet, it's because the humidity down here is brutal, and that's why you need the AC guy at Tampa Bay. Tell them about what you can do for the humidity, Greg.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough time to be in Florida, and I can't imagine before air conditioning what it would have been like to have dealt with this. But yeah, the air conditioning today has come a long way. There's so much we can do to control humidity and eliminate that. Actually allow you to set the temperature higher in the house by controlling the humidity better. So you don't have to keep it. I've been in homes where people could hang meat on the walls because they keep it at like in the mid 60s because they're trying to get the humidity out. If we get the humidity out, you can be very comfortable in the low 80 range.
The windows are all fogged up. I've seen it. I remember going in some places and university. They just had the AC was controlled centrally. You didn't even have the ability to do anything about it. So it would be at 68. You'd walk in there 66 degrees or something. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was all basically to keep it as as comfortable for as many people as possible, and they were driving the temperature low to remove humidity. We don't have to drive the temperature that low if we get the humidity out. That's why Arizona, is people out there talk about, it's 105 degrees, but it's not that hot. It's because there's not the humidity.
Well, tell me about the summers in Pennsylvania. Hey, Fred, you guys are both up from Pennsylvania area. I know it's a little different than down here.
Well, it's hot. When it gets hot in Pennsylvania, it's hot and sticky. Florida is a peninsula, so even though it's hot and humid, at least you have some airflow somewhere so that you don't have all the industrial whatever from Philadelphia sticking to your skin. And that's one thing about the Northeast. A true statement, and Greg, you'd probably back me up with that. When it gets hot up there, you can feel the dirt sticking to your skin.
Yeah, that is definitely a benefit of where we are here in Florida with the coastal breezes. It definitely helps.
Yeah. Now the Jersey Shore is a different story. When it's hot and humid down there on the Jersey Shore, you don't feel that because you're basically near the ocean. I spent a lot of time at the Jersey Shore.
Trying to think of that area, how many times I've seen a screen room, and I can't think of any of my relatives up in the Northeast that have a screened patio or some kind of screening.
Well, they don't because there's no snow load.
It's been so long.
The furthest north that you'll see a screen enclosure is in the Carolinas. And when I would play golf in Myrtle Beach, all my golf partners were looking at all kinds of things. My eyes are focused on the screen room. They say, what's wrong? No wonder you can't hit the ball in the hole. You keep looking at them screen rooms. But you get into North Carolina, no, you don't have them. And again, it's all about snow load. But
I've been to Floridian so long that my snow awareness was completely snow. What are you talking about?
I still have it. I brought my snow shovel down here from Pennsylvania, and at Halloween time, I stick it out on the front lawn. People run away.
Well, I know that the screen rooms are going so good down here, and you guys offer that panoramic view. That's something I didn't think that you could do.
I love the pano view. I started out in this business in 1992, believe it or not, and I was just a little kid right out of high school. Just kidding. And back then, actually, customers wanted something with a more open view, and we could not offer it. And some of the engineers that I would sell to, they would have a design, but we couldn't get engineering to build it. And I'm going to guess at the time frame. I believe the pano view enclosures. I think they hit the market in the Tampa Bay area about 10 years ago. And when that happened, it was a great thing because I knew that the market required that product, and the engineering was available at that point. So I do take a lot of calls where people have seen our work, have seen our pano view enclosures, and now they want to tear down the old one and go with a new one. And geez,
we got to reposition. We got to reposition those uprights. How does that work, Fred? If they're going to do if you have to re-engineer.
Well, let's say it's 60 feet across on the back side. Okay. Now, instead of having, 60. Let me do some math here. Eight. Let's say instead of having 8 or 9 openings on the back side, in 60 feet, I can do 3 large openings. And for engineering reasons, the header, the very top beam, goes up to a 2x10, which in standard product is either 2x3, 2x4. Depending on how it's engineered. But it goes to a heavy gauge 2x10, and it's supported by heavy gauge 4x4 uprights, whereas the standard enclosure is supported by 2x4 or 2x5, or maybe in some cases 2x6 uprights. But the 4x4 is a structurally, there's more metal, more meat to that 4x4 than there is to the 2x4, 2x5, or 2x6. So you automatically have altogether different type of structure supporting this. And it was never so much about the support. It was more about wind load.
Yeah, I was going to say wind seems to be the key.
Wind is the key. Now, when you stretch this out, let's say you have a 20-foot run with no uprights, and it goes top to bottom is 10 feet. Now you got 200 square feet of fabric.
Yeah.
So they use a product called polyscreen, and the beauty of the polyscreen is more flexible. And it's easier to roll in. And if you would put polyscreen on your standard enclosure on a few panels versus the standard fabric, after it's done, you could push on them in both and see where the polyscreen has more give to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's the beauty to it, because you're 200 square feet. You want that to give in a windstorm.
Yeah.
When I started out working in this business, the maximum square footage on a panel was 56 square feet of screen. And I saw the demonstrations years ago where at 130 miles an hour, at 129, that fabric would stay there. At 130, in every case, it would blow out. So it was engineered to 130 at 56 square feet. Now, in today's world, with the poly fabric, you're probably looking at the same thing. With a 130 wind, it's probably going to stay there. Maybe 125.
So innovation, new technology, and everything moves. Greg, any impacts? What would you say in your field, in the air conditioning field, that has impacted the game or changed it a little bit recently, technology-wise? Anything that you can think of?
The inverter compressor is probably the most recent impact. That and smart technology. A lot of smart stuff is getting into air conditioning now. So, smart thermostats have been for a while, but a lot of the units now themselves are becoming smart. We can connect to them and set them up with our phones, whereas, back when I started doing this, you didn't have that ability.
I knew a guy that was a mechanic that told me he had to learn, because of the computer systems in automobiles now, it's basically going to computer school for all his guys, whereas in the old days, they never had to think about computers controlling the vehicle. In fact, a lot of times the mechanics are locked up because of an issue, a software issue, a glitch. So you've had to learn how these smart systems control AC. The AC might not be coming on because the smart systems in error rather than the AC unit itself. Yeah,
it's ironic you mentioned that. We do have a unit that we're dealing with today, a customer, a 2-year-old unit that was high-end smart, and we're having to replace the unit today because of the smart technology. It just took a dump and is not working, and we couldn't get it straightened out. The manufacturer finally said, here's a new unit, just replace it. So, yeah, it is a whole different ball game, really. When I started, everything was electromechanical. You had relays and contactors, and everything was, on and off. But today it's all computerized. It's definitely different.
I tell you, it's impacted everyone, and even in the radio world, we talk a lot about technology and how great it is. You just have to learn it, and you have to learn how to work around. You have to have a workaround in case it doesn't allow you to do what you're normally doing. Yeah. Now, Fred, when you're out there doing estimates, you still paper and pencil? Tell me about tape measure, paper and pencil get you done, or you need a laptop to do what you do?
No, I do all pencil, paper, calculator, get on the phone and sell the job. It's pretty much it's a basic product. It's a basic system. I don't need to go beyond a tape measure. However, there are laser systems out there available for measurements, and a lot of the competition prefab companies where they build it in a factory and they bring it out, they'll measure everything with a laser. With our company, we still measure with tape measure because we build them on site. We custom them. So I'm, I think you know me enough that I'm really not ever thrilled about too much technology in my life. I still have a 67 Camaro in the garage, believe it or not.
Yeah, a little peek behind the scenes, as COVID-19 impacts everything, it impacted the Consumer Quarterback Show, and so we had a lot more guests doing Zooms and different things, and Fred said, I'll just call. I'm not going to spend too much time setting up this computer and going through all this Zoom technology, because in a few months I won't need to anyway.
Well, actually, in a few months, I'm going to do a Zoom session. I carry an appraiser license, too, and I'm doing my 30-hour continuing education on Zoom. It's going to be 3 days where you have to be on the Zoom. So I had a friend of mine set me up on Zoom, and I had so much fun on the Zoom, but it took a while to set it up. And there were a few snags. So when Brandon mentioned doing it with Zoom, I said, "Nah, just call me," because there were, I said to myself, a lot of snags.
That's the way to do it.
And I think you guys ran into a few snags.
We did. We've plenty. We're coming into a break here. More with our guys on the Consumer Quarterback Show. Greg Bowman, the AC guy of Tampa Bay, and Fred Muth, Tampa Screens and Aluminum. Come on back. Consumer Quarterback Show rolls on.
This is Chris Voss, former FBI lead hostage negotiator and owner of the Black Swan Group, and you're listening to Consumer Quarterback Show hosted by my friend Brandon Rhymes.
To get in touch with Brandon, call 813-670-7372. Online at consumerqb.com. You're listening to The Consumer Quarterback, Brandon Rhymes, online at consumerqb.com. Brandon is Tampa Bay's #1 consumer advocate for real estate and financial advice. Call Brandon today at 813-670-7372.
That's right, Brandon Rhymes, the Platinum MVP team with Keller Williams. He's the host of the Consumer Quarterback Show. However, he is out today. My name is James DeJerome. I'm the executive producer of the Consumer Quarterback Show. And like we do every day on the Consumer Quarterback Show, we brought a couple of partners together, and we're talking a little bit about their fields and trying to give you some information and knowledge that will empower you as a consumer in the marketplace. We're visiting with Greg Bowman, the AC guy of Tampa Bay, and Fred Muth from Tampa Screens and Aluminum. You're familiar with those guys if you listen to the show. They've been on a long time, and they got great information for you. And certainly you can trust those folks. They both happen to be from Pennsylvania and have been down here for a while, so they're used to the heat down here. I was going to get a little bit of that background with you, Fred. When you started doing screens, you didn't know about screens, like you said, till you came down here. So tell me about what it took for you to become the screen expert that you are now.
Well, my neighbor had this enclosure built, and we bought we purchased a brand new home here, and my neighbor came down and said, "You got to come up and look at my enclosure." Wow! So I went up and looked at it, and I said, "Gee, I like this. I go, this is a nice business down here." And I was involved in a couple other things, and then a friend of mine who lived on the street, Tom, I'll just say his first name. Him and his brother, they purchased a company, and they were the guys doing the screen enclosures. And one day I was talking to Tom. He says, "Hey, our salesman left." He says, "Why don't you come on down, and if you like these things so much, I'll show you how to sell them." Man, I liked it. So I went down. I started working with Tom and Ed of the other company, and I stayed with them until about 2000. I think it was 9 or 10, and they decided to retire. So at that point, I turned right over to my friendly competitor, Richard Pulse, who owns Tampa Screens. And him and the guys that owned the other company, they were friendly. We shared business together. So nothing really changed. I just changed companies, right, and everything stayed the same. And, everything that the previous company did, the hat would always go off to them from Tampa Screens, and anything that Tampa Screens would do, the hat would always get off to Tampa Screens, because there was this ultimate respect between both companies.
Well, that's the way it should be.
Yeah, well, it definitely should be. And I, being in the business as long as I have, I still share business with other contractors. People call me, I can't get to this one. Can you handle this one? Sure, I'll do it, And, something far away in another place, and I'll give it to somebody else. We have to do that. That's, strategic partners work.
Absolutely.
No matter what you do in business, you can't isolate yourself from your competitors, because you're all doing the same thing.
Our audience here on the Consumer Quarterback Show knows Chris Hatfield as well. Tell me about Chris.
My opinion of Chris, he shouldn't be in the aluminum business. He should be a radio man. Boy, I listened to him on the radio. I said, he missed his calling.
He acted like he was uncomfortable. He acted like he was uncomfortable at first, then I couldn't shut him up.
Oh, no, he's good. I'm driving down the road one day, and I just turned the show on, and I'm listening. I'm saying, geez, who's this guy? Man, he knows his business. And it turned out to be Chris. I'm like, geez, there's Chris. I like Chris. Chris has a tremendous background in the industry. I think his father was in the business, and Chris knew everything about the business when he came to work for Tampa Screens. Apparently, he worked for Tampa Screens longer than I have at one point. He worked prior to me being there, and then he came back. He's a super guy. We don't cross paths too often because number one, we all stay out of the office in most cases right now. We're trying not to go in the office because of this COVID thing. Quite often, I'll drop paperwork off at the office, and I'll be pulling in, and he'll be pulling out. We wave. That's about as far as that's the most that we really get in touch with each other at this point.
Sure.
I did meet him in the studio. That's the first time I met him, was in the studio. Your first impressions are what they are, and I was impressed with the guy. I really was.
No,
I heard him talk. I said, "Geez, this guy really could talk."
Yeah, he's a great guest. Hey, Greg, how about?
Be careful, he'll take your job, buddy.
Believe me. Hey, Greg, in terms of the AC guy of Tampa Bay, are you guys in hiring, or where are you at personnel-wise with your staff or people in terms of the COVID impact? Do you need less people, more people? What are you thinking?
Right now, we're not actively recruiting. We are always recruiting, though. We're always keeping our eyes open for talent. But we could probably bring somebody on right now just to keep up with the load, but I'm hesitant to do that until we know what exactly is going to happen. So
with the weather and all, are you seasonal? Do you try to have a larger staff once it starts to really ramp up the heat and humidity down here, or do you keep? How does that work? We do not. I'm not a fan of bringing somebody on and then having to lay them off. I don't think that's a good business model to follow. So we make do. In the slow season, it's a little slow. We got to scrounge for work. This time of year, the guys got to work a little extra hard. Is kind of how we work it. Now, the VIP program really helps level that off. Tell me about that again.
The VIP program is our maintenance program, basically, where we come in and take care of your air conditioning on an annual, or actually twice-year basis, biannual basis. We're coming in, maintaining your system, and doing all that for $14 a month. But that basically allows us to schedule those maintenance visits when we can schedule them. And the benefit of doing maintenance is it reduces a lot of demand calls. So instead of letting your air conditioner break when it's going to break, which is going to be on the hottest, most humid day of the year, by doing maintenance, we can catch those problems before they break and fix them at a convenient time when it doesn't leave you without air. So it really helps kind of level out our workload.
I could imagine that there's some people out there that come down here and just turn it on 65, and now it may not get to 65 in their house, but that's just how they leave it, so it gets a temperature they can tolerate. Is there a logic or a smart way to run your unit in terms of when you leave or when you're home, and what is an acceptable number to put on that? I recall the government actually advising folks during the energy crisis to not go below 72 on their thermostat. What's your take on that?
The temperature is really not that critical. It's the humidity. We don't want our humidity to go above 60%, because above that is when mold and mildew will start growing. So if somebody, especially a snowbird, is down here and they leave and go back up north, and they don't turn the air conditioner down and let the humidity build up, they can come back to a nightmare of mold. But controlling the humidity is the most important part. The temperature is really irrelevant. The setting is about making sure that the humidity doesn't get above 60%. The energy crisis, so the reason that was talked about is just because the lower we set the temperature, the more the air runs, the more power it's consuming.
I can recall as a kid seeing coils that were frozen or impassable. Air wasn't impassable because the thing was on. I don't know if it was on so long, or they just never maintained the filter, or what caused it to condense.
There's a number of things that can cause that. Dirty filters is one symptom. Low on refrigerant is another. Overworking the air conditioner does it specifically on the beaches. Where we usually see that is the vacation rentals. People come down. They've got this beautiful view and these glass doors that they just want to open them up, but they don't turn the air off, and they have it set at 65 degrees, and it's just running and running and running and running and running. That can cause it to freeze up too.
Now, in a situation where you feel like you've overused it or burned it, what do you got? New circuits? What do you have to do when you come in? Is that a new unit?
Not always. It just depends on a lot of factors as what needs to be done. We can most times repair units if it makes sense to do that. If the unit's newer, then obviously it probably makes sense to do a repair.
And we talked in the past about nowadays there's not such a difference in terms of construction of these units. It's similar, not one brand twice the expense of another because it's got twice the reputation in terms of production. They're closer together, is that correct?
Yeah, brand isn't really what I would value anymore. When I started in the industry, brand was big. We at that time we talked about the 5 big brands. There was Trane, Lennox, Carrier, York.
Right.
Those were the brands you wanted to get if you wanted a good quality product. Today, it really doesn't matter what brand you buy. The most important part is who's the guy putting it in, because it would be like if we bought a car today, we buy it by the brand. Because Ford, for example, they do everything with that car. They source the parts, they put them together, they test it, they assemble it, they've engineered it. With an air conditioner, the brand, they've sourced the parts and put them together partially. The contractor's the guy who takes the remaining parts that they've put together, brings them into your home, and makes them work in your home. So there's a lot of value in what contractors do in the job.
What of the relationship between the air handler and the unit? You replace one independent of the other, but they have to coordinate?
Yeah, years ago we would replace them independently. Today we pretty much have to replace them as a set because of code. Code now requires when we replace any kind of part of the system, we have to have an engineering certification that shows the energy efficiency of that unit. Manufacturers have to pay for that certification. They're not going to pay for that certification to match just any pieces of equipment. So we're kind of almost stuck in replacing them as sets now.
And you feel like the warranties from the manufacturer are about similar?
There's wide difference there. That's the most important thing I think to look at today, rather than brand, is what the warranties and guarantees are. A lot of manufacturers now are pretty much across the board warranting their parts for 10 years or more. The most important part, in my opinion, is the labor warranty. That's where it's really at today. I mean, if they're going to warrant the parts, that's great. But to give you an example, we had a Trane unit that we did not put in that was 3 years old, that the evaporator coil went out in it. To replace that evaporator coil was $2,500 in labor. So
to get in there and take it apart?
Correct, because of how difficult it was to do. A labor warranty, so a 3-year-old customer who bought this unit is 3 years old is quite upset that kind of cost is involved. So that's where I believe the real value is that, when you're shopping a unit, shop a couple of things. Shop the contractor, most importantly.
Absolutely.
I'm sure Fred will echo that. That really would affect the aluminum business as well. But that and then the guarantees and warranties.
Hey Fred, so big windstorm comes and they call you and say you got to come put all their screens back together, or you guys haven't had to deal with that kind of thing, or is that even spelled out? Does anyone ever try to say that you're responsible in case of a wind? What are you going to do about wind? You can't do anything about it.
No, wind is usually not the problem with the fabric. Generally, it's flying debris that does the damage. And the majority of, for example, when there's a major storm, the majority of the damage is usually caused by tree limbs or trees falling on the enclosures. That's about 60% of it. And of course, depending on the wind, a lot of times the neighbors' chairs and table will fly in the air and go through the enclosure, that kind of thing. But the fabric itself usually stays. I've seen where, going back to Hurricane Charlie back in 2004, house roofs would go, and the cage half of the cage would go and the rest of the cage would stay there, and people say, how did my house roof go and the cage not? It's a tough question to answer. But, back then the engineering was lighter on everything, including the cages, and as well as house roofs. But, there's a pizza line. Sorry about that. Pizza. You want 2 to go?
All right, hang in there. We're going to come back and visit with the guys a little more. Consumer Quarterback Show is going to continue to give you good news with a feel-good story like we always do, and more from our guys, Fred Muth, Tampa Screens and Aluminum, Greg Bowman, the AC guy of Tampa Bay. So come on back and check out the show.
Hey, this is Grant Cardone, and you're listening to Consumer Quarterback Show, hosted by my friend Brandon Rhymes. Do not touch that dial. I'll come right through the radio and grab your throat.
To get in touch with Brandon, call 813-670-7372. Online at consumerqb.com. You're listening listening to the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes, online at consumerqb.com. Brandon is Tampa Bay's #1 consumer advocate for real estate and financial advice. Call Brandon today at 813-670-7372.
You're listening to the Consumer Quarterback Show with Brandon Rhymes. Brandon is out today. My name is James DeJerome. I'm the producer of the Consumer Quarterback Show. As you've heard, Greg Bowman, the AC guy of Tampa Bay, Fred Muth, Tampa Screens and Aluminum, been sharing some stories about their business and some of the things that they've done during this COVID period that we're dealing with. And I got a feel-good story. One of the things Brandon always wants to do is encourage you to take time away from negativity and tell you something positive, and we're going to do that. I found a study about COVID-19 and its impact on the family. I wanted to read a little bit for you about it. This is about fathers and kids. So it says a new study revealed that fathers feel closer to their children as a result of COVID-19. The study released by the Canadian Men's Health Foundation found that in a survey of more than 1,000 Canadian fathers, dads were seeing positive changes in the dynamic with their children. Even though families have faced stressors and challenges with COVID-19, we recognize that fathers have been granted a golden opportunity to take time and slow down and connect with their kids. So it says many parents work full-time and commute, and when that's taken away, they have more opportunities for togetherness, like a game of catch or going for a hike. Men's health is impacted by their living situations, and they get a little more physical activity with their kids. It makes a big difference. So it says we've got some statistics. They said they've learned some things from the pandemic. During this lockdown, 40% of the respondents said that COVID-19 has had a positive impact on their role as a father. 52% said they're more aware of the importance of being a father. 60% feel closer to their kids, and 49% say they've engaged with their kids as a result of COVID-19. So 2/3 of fathers have been providing companionship to their kids more often during the lockdown, and likewise 56% have been providing guidance to their kids more often and are planning to do that in the future as well. So trying to find a silver lining for you, as we do on the Consumer Quarterback Show, trying to find something positive out there. The time you spend at home, can be time well spent. And I just want to encourage everybody out there to, like Brandon always says, commit a random act of kindness. And it could be even inside your own family where you think you're already taking care of everybody. All right, so back to the show. Greg Bowman, the AC guy at Tampa Bay, and Fred Muth of Tampa Screens and Aluminum, they get together during the break and they have discussions right over my head. You guys are talking about filtration. Why don't we pick that up? Tell me a little bit about it.
Wow, I was amazed at what Greg was telling me because I asked Greg about HEPA filters and how beneficial they are, and then Greg proceeded to tell me about the newer
what is
products.
Start with me, since I don't know, Fred. What is HEPA? What is a HEPA filter, Fred?
I don't. I just know we have them here because my wife has allergies.
Yeah.
My wife has allergies, and she buys these special HEPA filters that are. I think it's a much tighter filter.
Okay.
Yeah, HEPA stands for high efficiency particulate arrestants. The true HEPAs are used in hospitals and emergency rooms, that type of area, to reduce bacteria, virus spread. They're not 100% effective, but they will definitely reduce down to really small micron.
And this isn't a product that I could put in my AC unit, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, there's some misnomers out there. Like Fred is, when he's referring to HEPA, is probably referring to really what's a media filter. It's a better filtration system than the standard filter. True HEPA is very expensive to have in your home, so I doubt that I might be wrong, Fred, but I doubt that that's what your wife is buying, because they're typically, to replace those parts, are $400 or $500,
per unit.
Per yes, yeah.
Wow.
In a true HEPA.
Yeah, let's put it this way. She never told me what she spent on it.
It's probably media filters that you have, which a lot of people in the air conditioning industry call those HEPA because they are a better filtration system. They're more like the true HEPAs than your typical 1-inch filter that we get. They're basically a cartridge filter that's maybe 5 to 6 inches thick and pleats, so that it's got a lot of surface area, and it'll reduce a lot of that fine particulates.
So your unit has to accept that.
You have to have a part of the unit built for that, and it can be added to any system. A lot of times, a little bit of duct modification, it can be added.
Hey, Fred, what was the other thing you talked about? Light, Fred.
Well, yeah, Greg was mentioning the UV lighting systems that are available now to kill COVID and other viruses. Wow, that was amazing. Can you comment further on that, Greg?
Yeah, well, UVC, which is basically ultraviolet, the C is the wavelength. It's 254 nanometers is the particular wavelength of light, which is ultraviolet, will kill bacteria, viruses. And we've used that for 40-plus years in air conditioning. It's been out for a long time that we've been using it. It's just we haven't gotten really smart about using it. Actually, there was an article I just read yesterday that some people were arguing that we should be using it in public spaces. What they're saying is we should put sensors inside of public spaces that when there's no occupancy, there's UV lights in that building that turn
immediately
on,
sterilizes.
just sterilize the room as soon as people walk out of the room and then it's empty. And then as soon as there's occupancy again, the lights shut off and it's safe for people to come back in. UV is natural. It's in sunlight. It's what causes skin cancer. It's not good for us directly on our skin, but it is very effective at killing bacteria, viruses, and things like that. And we've had it forever to be able to mount in the air conditioning system to kill mold, mildew, bacteria, viruses as they're traveling through the airstream.
That's nice. And how about the copper? We were talking copper as well.
Yeah, well, copper copper is a natural antimicrobial. The Romans knew it. The Egyptians knew it. The Egyptians have texts from that they knew that it like water would last longer if they put it in a copper vessel than if they put it in a clay pot. So they knew this for a long time. We've known it. Actually, in the 1800s, the 1850s, there's a cholera outbreak in France, and the only people in France, subset of people who were totally unaffected by it were the copper miners and the copper smelters. So copper is a natural antimicrobial. I mean, in my opinion, we should make doorknobs out of copper. Anything we can that is a touch surface. If we put copper there, it's naturally going to kill bacteria and viruses.
Out of every tragic situation, there comes an opportunity, and you just have to use technology and education and try to think through it. And I guarantee somebody out there is going to find a way to turn this into a positive or find a solution that comes in a way that you wouldn't think of it. You guys mentioning the sunlight, I've heard that recommended by different organizations as something that's positive in a way of treating it, or get outside and spend some time in the sun. It has a detrimental effect on the COVID virus.
Yes.
I'm assuming that as you're walking down the street in a hot, sunny day, I'm assuming that if it's airborne, you got a better chance than if it's not a hot, sunny day. What do you think about that, Greg?
Yeah, most definitely. Sunlight, like I said, there's UV rays there, so they're naturally working to kill any kind of virus that's in the air. Viruses thrive in high, humid, dark situations. So put it in the light, and it's going to naturally want to eliminate it.
It's a great time to get out in your screen room, huh, Fred?
Yeah, it's hard to really top what Greg's saying. He's a very tough act to follow. To go from that to screen enclosures, I don't know what to say. Maybe we should start building these enclosures out of copper.
See, innovation. You're on the cutting edge, Fred.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me, anybody out there who wants to get a screen enclosure, we're coming down the last few minutes of the show. How's the best way to get in touch with you, Fred?
Best thing to do is just contact Tampa Screens and Aluminum. People do it every day, 813-960-7064. I could give my cell phone out, but there's no reason to do that. Let them call into the office, and they'll route the lead from there. The majority of our business comes in by telephone.
And how busy? You said you're pretty busy. What are they looking at in terms of getting you out to the place?
Well, unfortunately, I cannot handle all the leads in a timely manner that I'd like to. I'm able to bid some of the work by photos and surveys, and I'm doing a lot of that. If people want me to get to the site, typically I'm about 2 weeks out right now to get to the site.
Okay.
In some cases, if there's foundation work required, I may be able to get my concrete contractor, his salesman out to give them the quote on the concrete quicker. Or if there's paver work involved, I turn that over to the paver contractors, and I let them bid that first. And that way, at least the customer's getting in the system of getting a price.
Okay. How about you, Greg? What's the best way for folks to get the AC Guy of Tampa Bay to come out to their place?
Phone is probably the most direct method. 727-286-3170 is our direct line. We actually have a couple of numbers floating out there, but that's the main line. They'll all connect to that. You can also catch us on the web at acguyoftampa.com. No the and no bay. Our full name's the AC Guy of Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. We drop the and bay and just AC Guy of Tampa for our website.
And what's the special again?
Well, on our VIP program, $14 a month. We come out twice a year, take care of your air conditioning system, do all the maintenance that is required on that system. We also then will provide service after hours at no additional charge and give you a 20% discount on any other work you need.
Can't beat that, especially with the situation we're dealing with now out there. So hot, so humid. Well, it's been a great show. Thanks so much for the guys coming on. Like we always say with the Consumer Quarterback Show, we're doing our best to inform you guys and give you information and knowledge. Brandon wants us to encourage you to commit a random act of kindness, and certainly I think that's something that goes a long way in our community. Greg Bowman, the AC Guy of Tampa Bay, Fred Muth, Tampa Screens and Aluminum, just some of the partners you can find at consumerqb.com. We've really gone out of our way to try to make this a centralized hub for you to find folks that can help you and empower you in the marketplace. Thanks, Brandon, for letting me sit in your chair, and hope to see you guys again soon. ConsumerQB.com.
You've been listening to the Consumer Quarterback, Brandon Rhymes. Whether it's real estate, consumer, or financial advice, let Brandon call your next play. Contact Brandon Rhymes at 813-670-7372. That's 813-670-7372. Online at ConsumerQB.com. And join us next time